all grateful to Elaine for her gift of these occasions when we can get together. She is a wonderful hostess and imaginative, and she works hard all year to help those of us who are not able to be with our grandchildren. We're almost at the Christmas season again, and we're having to look at it differently this year because of this pandemic we're living through. It could really be a bleak Christmas, couldn't it? No big parties because of social distancing and masks. Imagine Santa Claus tippy-toeing through our houses wearing a mask. Fear of going to big department stores to shop for presents. No caroling parties. They say singing expels more droplets than ordinary talking. Children have been home for the whole season, and many of us are exhausted from supervising virtual schooling. Not much chance to buy the children special presents and smuggle them into the house without their noticing. Maybe not even a big Christmas dinner in the works. I said it could be bleak, maybe even disastrous. The darkest Christmas of our lives. It's tough, especially for those of us who are unable to see our grandchildren. Like you, I've always been pretty sentimental about Christmas. I remember wonderful times with my own children, how magical the days were when we had a big tree illuminated with festive lights and ornaments and had wrapped and hidden special packages we would bring out after the children had gone to bed on Christmas Eve, wanting to fill their minds and imaginations with the possibility that droll old figure of Santa Claus had brought them. It seems strange and punitive not to be able to do the same with our grandchildren this year. I know. My son and his wife and 4 children live only 40 minutes away from us, but I haven't been able to see and hug those dear children for 15 years or more. 2 of the children I've never even seen. And now we're living in a world that's stranger than ever for us, this awful pandemic. Most children unable to attend school, so many people who've died, so many out of work. Familiar businesses like J.C. Penney and Lord & Taylor failing and disappearing forever. Fear gripping everyone as we go about our business, shopping and trying to take care of necessary things, wearing masks and trying to avoid contact with others. How can we possibly have Christmas this year? It seems almost impossible, doesn't it? Nothing's the same. It's almost impossible to get that old familiar Christmas spirit we've always known in the past. I've been thinking about this and wondering what I could possibly say to encourage you, because I expect you could really use some encouragement about now, couldn't you? I wish I could ring some bells and sing a beautiful carol and make you feel better, but I'm not sure I can. I'll tell you what I keep thinking about when I try to imagine what I can say. I keep thinking about the first Christmas, the one when Jesus was born in the manger because his parents couldn't find room in the inn. It really wasn't such a great Christmas then, was it? I mean, in terms of lights and presents and turkey dinners. Oh, the wise men brought expensive gifts, but nothing a baby would care about, nothing like that clacking duck your auntie gave you years ago, or the little tin drummer boy that really made a rat-a-tat sound as his sticks hit the drumhead. It happened when the mother and father were away from home, making a long and tedious trip to be registered as aliens in a foreign government. They were in an animal enclosure, for heaven's sake, a barn or a cave or a smelly little stall in somebody's backyard. No doctor, no sanitation, no fanfare, just an imploding birth in a foreign environment because the fetus wouldn't wait any longer. Really bleak. Oh, the angels sang. That's part of the story, but the earthly part isn't all that great. It's really pretty dark and sordid. We germaphobes wouldn't have liked it at all. We couldn't have waited to get somewhere where there was running water to wash our hands, scrubbing them for 20 seconds while we sang 2 choruses of Happy Birthday. Talk about rough. That really was rough, wasn't it? Maybe we need to think about this Christmas and realize that we aren't the only ones who've had a hard Christmas. Christmas started out as hard. We may not be able to see our grandchildren this Christmas. We can't hug them and give them beautiful presents and sing Christmas songs together. But at least they're safe from harm, even if we can't see them. And they can dream the kind of dreams we all dreamed when we were children, and they can get up with their families on Christmas morning and laugh and play and open presents, even if we aren't able to be with them and watch them doing it. Maybe, just think, maybe it's good for us to have a Christmas like this, when things are so abnormal and we're all worried about the virus and whether our families will even survive it. We've had our fairy tale Christmases, the ones when life was good and there were lots of presents and everybody was happy and sang Christmas carols around the gaily decorated tree in the den or the living room. Now we're having one that's more in the spirit of the original Christmas, the one when the Savior of the world was born in a cattle stall and his parents had to hide him away from a maniac ruler who wanted to take the lives of all the newly born children. I know you'll miss seeing your beloved grandchildren at Christmas this year. We all will. But think of this as a learning experience, a time when things aren't easy for any of us, when life is hard and uncertain, when giving and getting presents is pretty low on our list of what we really want, which is to have the world back as we knew it and to be able to celebrate it with our children and their children with joy and singing and laughter and, just plain old togetherness. Let's all try to have a truly spiritual experience this Christmas, one when we're more mindful than ever of the love of God and the grace of his kingdom and the fact that we have a Savior who is known and loved throughout the whole world. It won't be easy. We'll shed some tears over our dear grandchildren and maybe some for the other people we know who are deprived of seeing their wonderful grandchildren. But we may be greatly enriched spiritually by having to do without those children this year, and by remembering how many people are actually suffering from the loss of loved ones, as well as the fact that they won't have a normal Christmas this year. But maybe it will be a real Christmas this year because it isn't the happy celebrative occasion it usually is. I hope so. That's almost better than having Christmas the way we've had it before. Maybe not just almost. Maybe it's a true gift from God and one we'll remember the rest of our lives. I hope so. And hope is what Christmas is all about, isn't it? Hope and love and joy. I hope you'll have a blessed Christmas and that the coming year will reward you with gifts you can't even imagine now. I've shared this before, I think, but as I have a bit of time left, I'll share it again. The year our son and his wife broke off with us, one of our big disappointments was that we couldn't have Christmas with our 2 grandchildren there were then. We'd already bought presents for them. The summer before, we were in Canada and came across a wonderful store that catered to children with some of the most imaginative and beautiful toys we'd ever seen. So we'd bought several of these unusual gifts for our grandchildren. My wife had already wrapped them, and they were waiting in the closet for the time when we would give them to the 2 little girls. We often walked in our larger neighborhood and had become acquainted with a lovely couple on another street who had 3 little children. We knew they were having a hard time financially, but were taken by surprise when they told us on one of our walks that they were having to give up their house because they could no longer afford it and would be moving at the 1st of December. We were so sorry for this young family, and I think my wife and I arrived at a decision as we looked at one another before saying anything. We would give our grandchildren's gifts to this dear young family so that their children wouldn't suffer from their financial hardship. They were so grateful when we took the beautifully wrapped packages to them and gave them to the parents one evening after the children had gone to bed. We didn't see this family again at Christmas, but we could imagine how delighted the children were to find the gifts under their tree on Christmas morning. It still gives me great joy and satisfaction to think about that. One of the gifts that I do remember in particular was a little jewelry box for a little girl, and it was made like a little fairyland cabin of some kind, and the roof lifted off in front to expose the drawers underneath where all the jewels were kept. And I can still see it in its pastel colors and everything. It was a beautiful little thing. It gives me a lot of joy just to think about it. Maybe that's something you could consider this year if you can't be with your grandchildren for Christmas. Maybe you'll think about someone you know, some family with little children who won't have much of a Christmas, and go out and buy some things for them. I can promise you that it will do your soul good, maybe not just for this year, but for years to come. Life is a beautiful gift. Sometimes we get stressed out with it because of things we're going through, because of illnesses or difficulties, and especially those of us who can't enjoy our grandchildren. And we feel bad during the holidays because we can't. And this year, with the pandemic and all of the extra burdens that it has brought to us, we're feeling especially low maybe. But let's think again about that first Christmas and how hard it was. And let's remember that Christmas wasn't meant to be easy. It was meant to be a reminder, a gift, something that brought us closer to God. And let's put ourselves in a mood to enjoy God this year, perhaps more than we ever have at Christmas time. God bless you. I'll say a prayer for everyone who's called in tonight.
Thank you so much, John. That was beautiful and very encouraging. I really appreciate it, and thank you for all you do, and we love you very much. And Merry Christmas and Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. And
Thank you, Elaine.
We'll be getting up with you soon. Okay,
all right.
Love you. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Dr. Amy Baker. Dr. Baker, are you with us?
I'm here.
All right, you may go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Hey, everyone. I guess I want to begin by thanking you, Elaine, for asking me to join this call tonight. I have a few key points I want to make in my 15 minutes. I hope that my comments provide you all listening with some knowledge, perhaps some comfort to you during this time of the holidays, which I know can be so painful for many targeted parents and grandparents. So I want to begin by recognizing that holidays are highly meaningful days for most people. And many of you have specific and idealized expectations of experiencing a very special kind of family closeness and together during the holidays. Holidays represent a kind of heightened moment in your life in which you're aware of living the day as it unfolds, but you're also aware at the same time that a special moment is being experienced and memories are being made. So when we're living through a special holiday, we're sort of experiencing the moment, and we're experiencing ourselves experiencing the moment, and we're thinking about how we're creating memories. So it's layers and layers of sort of consciousness and experience packed into these days. For most of us, holiday pleasure is wrapped up in being with children and grandchildren and seeing the holiday experience through their eyes, be it the awe of the wonderful costumes and abundance of candy at Halloween, or the enormous spread at the Thanksgiving dinner table, or the glowing candles and generous gifts of Christmas or Hanukkah or other winter gift-giving traditions. So to be deprived of being with your children or grandchildren on a holiday, it just hurts more than not being with them on other days, which already hurts plenty. Especially because you know that the memory of the day that the children hold in their minds and in their hearts will not include you if you're not sharing that day with them. And so the rupture in the relationship gets carried forward in some way through time. So that's, I think, why we're here on this call tonight and why we're thinking about it. The holidays are not just another day. They're a heightened, special day. And so to not be with your child on that day is more meaningful, both to you and to the child. So I want to talk, that my charge tonight was to talk for a couple minutes about coping during the holidays. So first, I want to invite you to be kind to yourself, and especially to be aware of any negative self-talk, which can really contribute to feelings of hopelessness or despair or shame or sadness. So self-talk is the things we say to ourselves in our own mind. And you might find yourself during this time saying something like, things will never get better. It'll always feel this way. Or I'm a terrible person and I deserve the pain and suffering I'm going through. Or I'll never feel any differently than I do now. I'm a failure. Or this terrible pain will never go away. And I want to be clear as I'm saying these things, not that I think you should be saying these things and not that I think that you will, but you might. And what research shows us is that what we say to ourselves inside our own head, meaning the thoughts, the talks that we do to ourselves, that affects how we feel. We used to think that when we feel badly, we then have negative thoughts, but it goes the other way as well. If we start with a negative thought, it actually can contribute to a negative feeling. So, we may not be able to completely stop the negative thoughts that are going around in our brain, to a great extent. Thoughts are automatic. You can't really, make yourself not think them. But you can try to be aware of them and to recognize, that's a negative thought. And to remind yourself that negative thoughts, they're just thoughts. They come and go. It's an opinion. It's not a fact. And it could be a distorted opinion at that. So clues that thoughts are distorted include words like always or never or any type of extreme and black-white thinking. So I invite you to be aware of your self-talk, to recognize that it might be a distortion, and then to have ready some alternatives to offer to yourself as an antidote. So when you find yourself engaging in negative self-talk, you can try thinking something else, such as, I'm having a hard time right now. This is very painful for me this moment, and hopefully things will be better in the future. Or you could say to yourself, this situation with my children, or maybe it's grandchildren, is extremely painful. But things with my spouse or friends or work or colleagues, whatever, are going well. Or you could say to yourself, my role as a parent is really compromised right now, but things are going well, financially, socially, creatively, whatever. The goal is to bracket your pain, your thinking about your pain, either temporally, so you can remember that the pain is current but not necessarily in the future, or you can bracket it by role. Your role as a parent might be very, very painful and challenging, but your role as a daughter or son or husband or wife or friend or neighbor or work colleague can still be satisfying and rewarding. So redirecting your negative self-talk in this way, bracketing it, containing it, rather than having it sort of poison and leak out into everything else. This is a skill that you can learn just by being aware of your negative self-talk and by practicing alternatives. So that's a skill that is a learnable skill that you can teach yourself, and it can help you. So my second suggestion is, and it is related to the first, is to not neglect the other roles that you play in your life. You are more than just a parent. You are a colleague and a friend and a neighbor and a child in a family and a partner in a relationship perhaps. And you want to make sure to cultivate these other relationships and areas of functioning so that you don't deprive yourself of opportunities to learn and grow and feel some pleasure. I'm not suggesting that you pretend to be happy, only that you don't close the door to happiness through your sort of possibly self-defeating, depressing, demoralizing self-talk. Third, and this is specific to the holidays, try to have a plan for the holiday. Make sure that you know what you will be doing and when you will be doing it and whom you will be doing it with. Make sure that it's the best possible choice that you can make in light of the current situation. Challenge yourself to really think about how you want to spend each of the holiday days that are ahead of you. What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to be able to say about them once they're over? Make sure that you don't leave it completely open and unstructured, as that could end up with you feeling alone and adrift. Maybe, many people make holiday plans in advance, and they may not be available to you if you reach out to them at the last moment. Ideas of things to do, especially on those days that you were hoping or expecting to be with your kids, include volunteering, online shopping for a special treat, doing an art project or home improvement project, being in nature, cooking, being with friends and family. Basically, anything that's healthy and brings you comfort and, of course, is COVID safe. One thing to think about in your holiday plan is what to do about gifts for your children or grandchildren if you're cut off from them. Many targeted parents and grandparents mourn the loss of the opportunity to give gifts to their beloved children and grandchildren and miss the pleasure of giving the gifts and seeing the children's joyful expressions when the wrapping paper is ripped off and the gift is revealed. In some situations, it makes sense to still give and send gifts, even if you cannot be there personally to enjoy the response. In other situations, it makes sense to buy the gifts and keep them wrapped and ready to give when the opportunity arises. Some parents and grandparents who were cut off make donations in honor of the children. Consider each option and choose the one that works best for you. There is no perfect solution in cases of parental alienation, but some options just feel better than others. Fourth, have a plan for what to do when people ask about your family, especially your child or children, so that you don't get overwhelmed or confused in the moment and end up saying something that you later regret, either because you've shared more than you intended to or because you inadvertently badmouth your ex or your kids in a way that can come back to hurt you and your case if you're still legally involved. Many targeted parents and grandparents feel trapped and anxious when asked at a social gathering by acquaintances, how are the kids and grandkids doing? What are they up to these days? Because they may not know how the kids are doing or what they're up to these days. And being asked can trigger a cascade of negative thoughts and feelings, such as shame that you don't have contact with the kids, or sadness that you're not up to date on their goings-on, or envy of other children whose kids and grandkids haven't cut them off, especially if they're objectively speaking worse parents. Please know that whatever you're feeling is normal and okay. There's no emotion that would be a surprise or out of the norm. And while all feelings are acceptable and understandable, that's not the case for all actions. So it's not okay to do or say something that will hurt you or hurt someone else. So to avoid this, you can think up a few responses in advance to cover the likely questions, such as, the family's doing well, thanks for asking. Now tell me more about, and shift the focus away from your situation. Most people are happy to talk about themselves and may not even notice. You could also say, oh, it's a long story. Let's talk about something else if you don't mind. This conveys that you're not really inclined to go into any detail. Or you could share what's going on in a kind of superficial way by saying the kids are living with the other parent right now and you're going through a rough patch. This is a good strategy for parents who feel that it's dishonest to convey that everything's okay when it's not. My personal belief is that you don't really owe anybody anything, especially a casual acquaintance. You don't have to tell them the full story. It's okay to pretend that things are okay when they're not. That is my belief, but you can decide what makes sense for you. If somehow you end up sharing more details than you intended, it's essential not to use the phrase parental alienation or in any way point the finger at the other parent or whomever you believe is fostering the alienation, or imply that the kids or grandkids are brainwashed or coached or programmed. This is likely to get back to them, and you will then have engaged in the very behaviors that you're accusing the other person of engaging in, and you will have insulted your children. The phrase parental alienation does mean different things to different people, and it can sound like you're saying that everything is the other parent's fault, which is not appropriate to say to a casual acquaintance. And saying that your kids have been brainwashed can certainly sound insulting, as it implies that they're not authentic and able to think for themselves, which is what you may believe, but it still would not be palatable to them. Obviously, they would be rightly hurt if you found out that you said anything like that, so it's best to think it through in advance, how you plan to handle the situation so that you're not caught off guard. My fifth point relates to a story I read about the renowned psychotherapist Alfred Adler. One of his patients shared in a session one day that he was feeling sad, and Adler surprised his patient by, rather than offering ideas for how the patient could do something to make himself feel better, something nice for himself, instead, Adler assigned to his client the task of going out into the world and doing something nice for someone else. The patient, perhaps thinking that his doctor did not understand the problem, reiterated that he was feeling very down and out of sorts, and he said he was very, very sad. Adler was supposedly saying, then I do change the prescription. What I actually recommend is that you go out and do 2 nice things for someone else. The point being that sometimes helping others does help ourselves, and this works in a few ways. The first is that it serves as a distraction. If you get caught up in baking 100 cupcakes for a bake sale to raise funds for healthcare workers, or you start making holiday masks for your friends, or you get involved in a local volunteer project, whatever the specifics, you may lose yourself in planning and the doing and the making and being busy, and the distraction can be a welcome relief from the sometimes all-consuming preoccupation with the parental alienation family situation. Second, when you do for others, you may realize that despite your incredibly frustrating and painful situation, other people have their own suffering and problems as well, sometimes even worse than your own. And sometimes perspective can change how you feel about your situation. And finally, we can enhance our own self-worth when we do something that makes us feel proud of our efforts, our good heart, our kindness. Doing good can enhance our sense of value and worth and give us a little boost of positive self-regard, which is always helpful as a counter to the negative messaging that targeted parents experience from the other parent, from the child, and maybe even the legal and mental health professionals. So in closing, I want to encourage everyone listening tonight to do the best you can for yourself, to try to rise above the despair and the pain, because you deserve to have a holiday that has some joy and peace and love in it, even during these incredibly troubling and painful times. That's my talk. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Dr. Baker. Those were some very much needed words that we needed tonight. I'm wishing you and your family a happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas as well.
All right. My best to everybody.
Thank you. Okay, next up will be Dr. Colleen Murray. Dr. Murray, are you ready?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I would also like to thank you, Elaine, for all the coordination that you did to bring not only this call, but all the programming for this cause to fruition. And I'm going to be speaking about co-parenting. And co-parenting during this time of year is challenging under the best of circumstances. But when you add in the inactive alienator, it can stretch one's coping skills to the breaking point. And the last thing a co-parenting family needs during the holiday time is an eruption of emotions. And this is true for a lot of reasons, but mostly because the emotional turmoil will impact your children far more than you or your alienating co-parent. This discussion is focused on individuals whose cases would be considered mild to moderate alienation. And I'll offer some tips on how to model appropriate and healthy behavior for your children. When I think about the holidays, I often think about watching movies like A Wonderful Life or A Christmas Story or Home Alone. Do you remember watching Home Alone and seeing the child left behind to defend himself? You know, before I started working with families in high-conflict custody cases, I thought this movie was really funny, but it's not so funny to me anymore. Now I see that on some different level. It mirrors some of the reality for a child in a parental alienation case. For instance, in the movie, both parents are distracted for different reasons. And it's the same in reality. One is stuck in their alienating behavior, and the other in defending the alienator's attacks. This results in neither one of them being emotionally available during a time of what should be family togetherness. But the child feels home alone. In an effort to assist your kids in not feeling similarly home alone this season, I'm going to provide some information and tips that I hope will help you to understand how to be emotionally available and home for the holidays. Tonight we will cover the following points. Empathy, what it is and how to understand it, how understanding it can be helpful, especially during this holiday season. Using empathy to maintain healthy boundaries and communication with your alienating co-parent, and using empathy to minimize your stress and that of your child. First, empathy. What is it and how can we understand it? Empathy is a learned behavior that is assisted by what is called mirror neutrons. The discovery of mirror neutrons happened in the 90s and was a revolutionary discovery in that it changed a psychologist's view of how humans come to understand the world around us. No longer did psychologists believe that we were solitary minds experiencing the world in a detached and mechanical way. Rather, they figured out that we are literally able to connect to others and experience their minds, leading us to seemingly understand another's thoughts, feelings, and intentions. This is possible because mirror neutrons fire not only when we perform an act, but also when we witness others performing an act. Therefore, the more experiences we have in life and the more we observe others, the more the mirror neutrons fire, making us more sensitive to and seemingly able to understand and share another's feelings. This is true even to the extent that we can seemingly understand a person's intentions and their emotions behind their actions, which helps us to be able to respond in a congruent way. We are also able better to anticipate another's responses, and it helps us in assisting to develop empathy, which is critical in connection and healing emotionally and developing cooperative relationships. There are 3 different types of empathy: cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. Cognitive empathy is the ability to mentally take on someone else's perspective of the world without necessarily engaging in the presenting emotion. This is an extremely useful skill, especially when one is wanting to negotiate, as it helps us get inside the other person's head and helps us to understand the person's emotions, which may be driving their position. We are still able to maintain the necessary emotional distance so we can effectively negotiate. However, the downside of cognitive empathy is that we can come across as cold and detached. Emotional empathy is the vicarious sharing of another's emotions. This is when we move from the cognitive perspective to a shared emotional experience. Social psychologists describe emotional empathy in 3 parts. 1, feeling the same emotion as the other person. 2, feeling our own distress in response to the other person's pain. And 3, feeling compassion towards the other person. The positive aspect is that emotional empathy helps us to develop an understanding of others and their feelings. The process of developing empathy starts in our infancy with our caregivers. You may have seen this many times. It's a process that takes place when a mother smiles at the baby and the baby smiles back. The baby doesn't actually understand what the smile is, but the baby is trying to connect. Or when a baby cries, when a baby hears another baby crying. However, the negative aspect is that emotional empathy can result in one becoming emotionally overwhelmed, especially when one has little to no coping skills. which is what can happen to children trapped in a loyalty conflict brought about by alienation. You see, we have taught our children since birth to read our faces and to respond. It starts as a game. We laugh, they laugh, and now it's a habit. They can read our emotions by our facial reactions. The downside of emotional empathy is that when people lack the ability to manage their own distress, they can get very emotionally deregulated. It is this dynamic that we see that plays out when a caregiver is distressed and their child becomes emotionally deregulated. Finally, there is compassionate empathy. This is when one feels another's feelings so completely that they are moved to help reduce the other person's negative feelings. As I've been talking, are you beginning to understand the critical part empathy plays in helping you through this holiday season? Even though you may not be seeing anything, when your child is around you and watching you, they are feeling everything. Under the best of circumstances, holidays are a very emotional time for divorced and separated parents and children. However, when one adds in the dynamic of alienation, they are monumentally more difficult, especially for your child, regardless of their behavior. So remember, when your child is moved to protect the favored parent, as the favored parent takes advantage of your child's emotional empathy through demonstrating distress from having to be alone, your children are simply responding with compassionate empathy. You can counter this, though, with cognitive and compassionate empathy. Point 2, using empathy to maintain healthy boundaries and communication with the alienating co-parent over the holidays. You will need to use cognitive empathy when responding to your alienating co-parent. Cognitive empathy helps us to see their emotion and at the same time remain detached from it. When dealing with an alienating co-parent, it is imperative that you remain in a responding mindset and not a reactive mindset. You have to resist the urge to be in the emotional empathy mindset because your alienating co-parent has laced the correspondence with highly emotional words with the hopes that you will be provoked. And when you react, your words and actions come across as demanding and aggressive. And our alienating co-parent will use this as evidence of your bullying them, creating this narrative that they are the victim, or the narrative of how emotionally unstable you are, aiding in their quest to prove you're crazy. Now, a measured, responding mindset comes across as cooperative and focused on conflict resolution instead of conflict. So if, for example, the alienating parent requests extra time, instead of responding in a reactionary mindset stating, absolutely not, you have taken enough time from me. You do not believe that if you say yes, the request from the alienating co-parent will reciprocate or appreciate your compassionate empathy. In a responding mindset, the response can be, I'm sorry, but our parenting plan or temporary order clearly states that I'm to pick up Sally at 5 p.m. I think it would be better for Sally if we just stick to the plan. And then regardless of what the alienating co-parent sends you or says after that, do not respond. To be sure, I do understand that this is very difficult. But remember, our words have power, and we are responsible for our words and how we choose to express ourselves. Therefore, we must choose our words with wisdom and discernment if we are to create a positive change. 3, using empathy to minimize your child's stress. Readying ourselves to face the stress of the holidays requires you to be psychologically flexible. That is, updating or shifting cognitive strategies to respond to the changes in your environment between one task and another, and to rapidly adapt to the changing circumstances. So set realistic expectations. No holiday celebration is perfect. View the challenges as opportunities to exercise your flexibility and resiliency. A lopsided tree will not ruin your holiday. Create family memories of new traditions. So you'll need to exercise emotional and compassionate empathy. Be proactive. If you are concerned about potentially stressful or difficult conversations, remember to focus on good memories and what you and your co-parent have in common, your child. And plan activities with your child that foster fun, laughter, and such as looking through photo albums or playing games or creating new ideas for new family traditions. And keep things in perspective. Stay focused on the broader context and not the long-term perspective. Remember what's important. It's yours and your child's relationship. And laying the foundation for a good co-parenting relationship, even with an alienating co-parent, can help your child through this time. And most importantly, take time for yourself. I'm not going to belabor that point, as I believe my colleagues have and will offer many more tips for this. And at the end of Home Alone, the family realizes that more important than anything is their relationship. So stay focused on your relationship with your child and your alienating co-parent. I seem to have gone a little faster than I thought. I thought I wrote out more than I had time for. So I will turn it back over to Elaine.
Thanks so much, Dr. Murray. We really appreciate that. We haven't had much talk on co-parenting, so I'm glad that you're touching base on that because that is a very important topic. So thank you, and, of course, I wish you guys a happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas as well.
Great. I want to start by thanking you, Elaine, for including me in this very important evening tonight. I want to thank all the other esteemed speakers on this panel for their words of wisdom, and I hope that my words can bring some comfort and guidance to each of you. In thinking about thoughts on how to help those that are listening cope with the holidays, being a trial lawyer, I usually think in terms of litigation themes and theories. And those of you that are involved in active cases or those of you who are considering becoming involved in a PA case will realize soon enough that the holidays really don't stop cases, and they continue to proceed throughout the case, throughout the holiday time. There may be some short, brief respite around the holiday itself, but the cases continue to proceed. And because of that, as a trial lawyer, I am always constantly preparing clients for stressful situations, hearings, depositions, trial, interviews with a guardian ad litem or an amicus attorney, interviews with a custody evaluator, helping a client defend against false allegations of physical or sexual abuse, and then having all of this under the umbrella of a PA case as the holidays approach. I think in my practice at least, and I'm sure some of the other speakers would echo, I have seen with all of the other very difficult, challenging aspects of 2020 that the manifestations of children who are experiencing alienation seem to be getting more extreme and more outrageous. The activities of the alienating parents seem to be more extreme and more outrageous, and it calls for a steeling of yourself, if you will, through these difficult times, particularly through the holidays. All of these things that I've mentioned can leave clients feeling that they're ignored or they're not being listened to, that they're doubted, that they have insurmountable mountains of evidence to climb and hurdle over, relentless theories that keep on changing, experts and pseudo-experts who offer opinions that seem to further drag the client down, fact witnesses who testify often untruthfully, many, many obstacles in the road, all of which seem to be insurmountable. On other topics of family access, I know Dr. Miller and others have spoken about how alienating parents typically come across with the 4 C's: calm, cool, collected, charming, and that the alienated or the targeted parents come across, or grandparents come across with the 4 A's: angry, anxious, agitated, and afraid. And I'm challenging each of you out there tonight to use some of the peace and the serenity mentioned by the speakers and from the holidays themselves to try to bring about more of a calm demeanor, a cool attitude, a collected approach, and I guess as charming as you can possibly be. There are many, many things that some of the other speakers have mentioned that are out of our control and certainly out of your control, facts and events that change sometimes daily or even by the hour, of which really there's not much that can be done. But draw upon the peace and serenity from the holidays and even the peace and serenity from past holidays to help you focus on controlling your emotions and coming across as a more positive, collected, persuasive advocate both for yourself and your children. I think that the holidays may be a time to help us focus on doubling down on perseverance, remembering the good holidays from the past and committing to make them a reality again. If it's not this year, then it's the next year, but never giving up hope that that can and will happen. Recognize that you can only do so much and that you are only good for your children and your grandchildren if you take care of yourself. Many of the speakers tonight have mentioned these topics and have touched upon these topics, but you really have to be your best self to help increase your chances of a good outcome in a parental alienation case. Be mindful to take time to care for yourself. Slow things down. All of us are constantly on our phones, on our computers, texting, emailing. Slow things down. Turn off your devices. Breathe deeply. Focus on peaceful, harmonious thoughts. You will be a benefit both to yourself and to your children or grandchildren. Do simple things, which others have mentioned. Eat right. Exercise. Listen to music. Laugh. Laugh with those that make you laugh. Associate with those that make you laugh. Listen to a comedy show. Travel to the extent that you can in these COVID times. Read. Get a massage. Take a yoga class. Meditate. Enjoy the company of good friends and family. Enjoy the peace and solitude that you have within yourself. It's a wellspring of healing within yourself. Tap into that. Get out in nature. Walk. And cultivate some habits and activities for yourself to help make these holidays less stressful and more enjoyable. When I'm teaching my clients or working with my clients, preparing them for depositions, hearings, trials, etc., there's a number of things that I stress to help make stressful situations perhaps less so. I often tell my clients, focus on the things that you fear the most and you worry about the most, and actually bring them out into the open, speak them, put them out on the table, touch them, examine them from different angles. Give life, if you will, to your worst fears. And I think what you'll find, as most people find, that the fear of the event or the fear of the thought that you're thinking of is much worse than the actual event itself, rather than keeping it buried inside of you, eating you alive, if you will. Use these holiday times to develop new strategies, new ways of thinking, new coping mechanisms, a different way to sort of look at the glass. Is it half empty or is it half full? And I say every time it's half full. It is always half full. Pause and gather your thoughts. This is what I would tell a client preparing for testimony, but it's important during these holidays to use the same approach. Slow down the pace. Even if everything's coming at you fast, whether it's you're actually being questioned in court or in a deposition, or you're being examined or interviewed by countless people, no matter how fast they speak, no matter how many questions they ask, pause, take a breath before you respond. Focus on some happy outcomes that you want to achieve and play those out in your mind as well. Put those happy outcomes and scenarios on the table in front of you. Touch them, feel them, examine them, breathe them, imagine them, give life to them. All of that, I think, will bring peace and comfort to you. It goes without saying to breathe deeply. There's one court in Houston, Harris County, where the judge had a sign on her bench that said, breathe, just one word, breathe. I think we all forget how healing and how important that is to breathe. It's self-soothing, and I'd encourage you to practice deep breathing. Practice listening during the holidays, listening to those, as Dr. Baker was saying, in all your different capacities, your neighbors, your coworkers, your loved ones, the person you're in a relationship with. Use this holiday time to practice listening and not talking over others and not always having an agenda to sell. Listen. It's a way of sharing. It's a way of connecting. Focus on concise, persuasive speech. I tell clients if they're approaching a deposition or a trial testimony, give answers that give the powerful headlines or the Roman numeral outline form of the answer. Stop speaking in chapters and verses where people want to interrupt you or people want to tune out because they can't stand listening to you. Focus on that, both for the holidays and for your case. Focus on answering the questions that are asked of you and then stop and wait for the next question. Focus on stopping interrupting others. Use this downtime of the holidays to practice using descriptive words like an artist painting on a canvas. It's one thing to say no. It's a different thing to say absolutely not. I strongly disagree. That is completely incorrect. Reframe some of these ways that you might speak about questions that you're asked. Practice, and it's very difficult, controlling frustration and combativeness. One thing that makes you sink both personally, spiritually, morally, any way you want to talk about it, and certainly to sink as a litigant on the witness stand, is being combative, is being angry, is fighting with the other side, is fighting with the whole world. I don't think I've ever seen targeted parents more under assault and more taking hits from every which way that 2020 has to offer. And it's important to work on ways that work for you to help communicate yourself, as Dr. Miller said, in a more centered, in a more balanced way. It will bring many, many rewards to you and your children by acting that way. As we have Thanksgiving approaching, I always was told by my parents as a young boy, make a list of all the things for which I am thankful. I think it's important to start that list now. And don't make it only around Thanksgiving. Come back to that list and add to it. So when you're feeling down, you're feeling overwhelmed, think of all the many, many things for which you're thankful and should be thankful for. And I challenge each and every one of you that there are many, many things for which you can and should be thankful that probably have gotten tossed by the wayside or lost as you're floundering and trying to keep your head above water in this sea of parental alienation. Think about this. A couple things as I'm concluding with my time. Find one or two things a day that really give you pleasure. Not a single day should go by, even if you're sick in bed and feeling miserable, where you don't do at least one thing that makes you smile, that makes you laugh. Maybe you pull out a high school yearbook and read some sayings from some friends a long time ago. Do a few of those things. Also want to offer you this hopeful message, which is all of us know that change comes at mysterious times and in mysterious ways. Imagine that there is a reversal of your fortunes much closer to you, impacting the dynamics of your family. Could be a month from now, could be 4 months from now, could be 6 or 9 months from now. And how very sad it would be if you gave up at this point and said, I can't do it anymore, knowing that that positive outcome is out there for you. And I encourage each of you to think that way each day. Reinvent yourself in small ways. Discard your old negative ways of thinking. Work on channeling positivity and hopefulness, both for yourself, as a model for your children, as a model for your grandchildren, as a way to shine light into everything you do, even during these extremely dark and difficult times. I really appreciate each of you listening to me tonight. It's a very short talk. I want to wish each of you very, very positive results in your cases, in your situations with parental alienation, wishing you peace and joy and reunion with your children and your grandchildren, to which you and they are entitled to so richly and so deservedly. And I want to wish each of you a very happy, healthy, peaceful holiday. God bless to each of you.
Thanks so much, Robert. We really appreciate all those words. It's very meaningful. Thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas to you and your family as well.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Mark Mosk. Dr. Mosk, are you there?
I indeed am here.
Thank you, Dr. Mosk. You may go ahead.
Thank you, Elaine. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to share with everyone. As Elaine indicated, my name is Dr. Mark Mosk, and I've been a practicing clinical and forensic psychologist now for over 35 years. And I realize that in the parlance of a baseball game, I'm the last batter up tonight among all the speakers who have shared with you thus far. And we're now in the bottom of the ninth inning. So thank you very much for staying in your seats and not leaving the ballpark and remaining through the end of the game. Throughout my career, both here in Chicago, where I currently reside, and in California, where I also practice, I've been working with men and women and dysfunctional families, helping them to improve how they feel and how well they function in their daily lives, including persons who have experienced the impact of alienation of their children's or their grandchildren's affection by another family member. The arena of parental alienation has been one in which I have developed very deep passions. As you so well know, the emotions surrounding these circumstances as an alienated parent, a targeted parent, or grandparent are often very raw and sadly frequently last quite a long time. Similarly, the process of being able to feel good again when facing such difficult situations is sometimes rocky and always takes time, more time than we would ever imagine it would take. My remarks in the next few minutes we have together today hopefully can serve as a guideline and suggestions on how best to feel content and satisfied during the upcoming holiday season, along that which the other speakers have shared so brilliantly this evening. The holidays often serve as benchmarks, a time when we examine and evaluate our lives and what we perceive as our blessings and our challenges. Sometimes our challenges actually may be blessings unto themselves if, for example, we learn to become better people by working through our adversaries as we learn to develop resilience and coping mechanisms. We're reminded during the holidays about our current status and our situations in life, and especially this is true as it relates to our families, which is one of the factors that makes the holiday season so very challenging for many people. We recall our loved ones with who we no longer have regular contact. We yearn for the reestablishment of those close relationships. We struggle with seeing life as a glass, as Bob was mentioning, as a glass being half full, when certainly it sometimes and very often feels like the glass is so very, very empty. We do experience a wide variety of emotions at different times, under different situations, and at varying degrees of intensity. We may feel beaten and dejected, depressed sometimes, and empty. We might feel powerless, desperate, frightened, sometimes hopeless. We also may feel discarded and punished and rejected by the people we love most. And we may feel bitter and enraged on occasion. All of these feelings are very real, legitimate, and they are indeed quite painful. We spend time thinking about what we have and what we don't have. We spend time thinking about how things are. We spend time thinking how they might have been, how they might have occurred differently, what they should be. We spend time thinking how we wish they might be in the future. But this need not be the case this year, my friends, at these holidays. The key to understanding how we can feel better during the holidays, and I shared this with you, of course, as a clinician, lies in the word I previously used, the word think. In our field of mental health, we know and understand that people's feelings and emotions are the direct result of how we think, what we think, and specifically and simplistically, what we say when we talk to ourselves, in good times and bad times. The science of our field of behavioral health shows that our attitudes form the foundation of what we feel. We are in constant dialogue with ourselves, 24/7. We talk to ourselves constantly, but it is done indeed at a subconscious level, to the extent we're not even aware that we are speaking to ourselves, having thoughts, both positive and negative, and engage in a dialogue that goes on from the moment we awaken until the moment we fall asleep. We are continuously expressing to ourselves various thoughts, perspectives, analyses, interpretations, and our view of the world and our role within that world. We tell ourselves what we believe to be true and what seems real to us. But the truth of the matter is that while some of our beliefs are indeed true and accurate and realistic and reasonable, not all of them are. Some of those thoughts actually are slight distortions of reality and what is true. And they are based entirely upon our subjective experiences, impressions, and opinions. It is our beliefs and our attitudes that lead us to develop the feelings and emotions that we experience. And it is those feelings and emotions that ultimately trigger and provoke and elicit our reactions to life, to other people around us, and our behaviors. And then the world around us will either accept our behavior and support us, or sometimes ignore and punish us. And this is how human behavior actually works. A relatively simplistic series of processes of having specific thoughts and beliefs that trigger our feelings and emotions, and then we react to those emotions. So the question for this evening is, how do we help ourselves feel better? The simple answer is that we must learn how to reframe our thinking into helpful and rational thoughts, into logical and accurate reflections of reality and how things really are. We must learn to recognize that when we tell ourselves things that may be partially true or perhaps even blatantly false, but we treat them very often as completely true and accurate reflections of life. And when we do this, when we can indeed reframe our thinking into helpful and rational thinking and thoughts, when we do this, we can actually change the nature of how we talk to ourselves. And by doing so, therefore, change how we react emotionally to the things that we tell ourselves and to the world around us and to our circumstances. So, for example, some of us might hold the following beliefs and might be telling ourselves thoughts such as the following. I'm completely alone this holiday. Nobody cares about us. I can't make it through the holidays this year. I'll never see my grandson again. Things won't ever get better. Life is cruel and unfair. My daughter will always hate me. My heart is so empty. I've lost that relationship forever. What am I going to do? So these are just simple exemplars and examples that just popped to the top of my mind. of ideas and thoughts and things that we say to ourselves when we are hurting deeply. Now, although you might believe any one of these thoughts, these self-statements, to be true and honest and accurate reflections of the world around you, in fact, each of the statements I just shared with you a moment ago, every single one of them actually has elements that make them entirely irrational, illogical, and misleading, although at first glance they certainly don't seem that way. All of these thoughts represent a false interpretation of reality. As a result, since we nevertheless believe them to be true in our own minds, we react to them, and we react with corresponding negative feelings. Feelings that constitute depression, anger, and anxiety at different moments in time. So, for example, the statement, "I'm completely alone," can understandably lead to feelings of sadness and desolation. The statement, "Nobody cares about us," can leave one feeling devalued and dejected. The statement, "I can't make it through the holidays this year," leads to fearfulness and feeling downcast. The statement, "I'll never see my grandson again," can provoke feelings of hopelessness and rejection. The remark, "Things won't ever get better," can lead to nervousness and a feeling of gloom and doom. The remark, "Life is cruel and unfair," can lead one to feeling distressed and bewildered, and more, and so on and so on. These statements that we make to ourselves in these examples predictably trigger feelings that are negative, that are distracting, and that provoke us to feel unwanted and out of control. So in order to feel better, we must learn how to change. You must learn how to change what it is that you are saying to yourself so that those thoughts and beliefs are more accurate, honest, logical, and friendly. Now, while psychotherapy, formal psychotherapy, is by far the best way to permanently fix these types of negative and distorted thinking, one instead can begin to use some simple self-help strategies during this holiday season to feel at least temporarily better. So allow me to offer you some examples. The statement, "I'm completely alone," can be replaced with, "I'm not with my son right now, but I have people that love and care about me." The statement, "Nobody cares about us," can be replaced with, "I have good friends and family that support and feel close to us." The statement, "I can't make it through the holidays this year," replace that with, "I'm resilient and I know how to cope, even though it's sometimes really hard." The thought, "I'll never see my grandson again," can be replaced with, "He's not with me now, but no one can predict the future and hope is my strength." When we say to ourselves, "Things won't ever get better," replace that statement with, "I'm sad now, but some things in my life are good and the future always holds promise." "Life is cruel and unfair," replace that one with, "Life is filled with ups and downs, and happiness can come at any time." When we say, "My daughter will always hate me," replace that with, "She loved me before, and we'll find together that love and that same respect once again." And the statement finally, "My heart is so empty," replace that one with, "I'm sad about some things, but I also have many reasons to be grateful, to be thankful, and to feel fulfilled." Now, you will note that all of these alternative replacement statements do not ignore the sentiments originally expressed, nor are they unrealistically positive and exuberant as versions of the negative thoughts, but instead they are simply more rational and reasonable ways of conveying the essence of the thought to yourself without the negative tone and the distortion of reality. In other words, we are capable as people of identifying the core essence of the things that bother us the most, but at the same time acknowledge the feeling and find better ways to express it. So how do you shift your attitude and your beliefs to reduce your negative emotions? 4 different thoughts. Number 1, I recommend using journaling to write down your thoughts and feelings in a narrative form. Identify those thoughts within your narrative that are negative, irrational, and unrealistic, and then find more realistic alternate ways of expressing those feelings. Number 2, become keenly mindful of what you're thinking when you're actually thinking it. Pay close attention to what you're feeling and thinking. Catch yourself thinking a negative thought and then interrupt it and replace it with a healthier, kinder, and more truthful comment that conveys the essence of your feelings, but in a far more positive, kinder, and a healthy emotion. Third, fill your environment with cues, people, things, activities that remind you of love, kindness, gratitude, and a happy and satisfying future that certainly you deserve and will come your way. And then lastly, document your successes and congratulate yourself regularly on taking positive action steps to control your mental well-being, and for taking the personal responsibility for looking at the future as the glass half full, and for being a better manager of your emotions. All of us indeed are capable of this type of self-control and self-awareness. So I realize that it's been a very limited amount of time that we have to share, but hopefully some of these thoughts and comments and ideas are ones that can be helpful for you. And I wish each and every one of you much success and joy in your life, and hopefully allowing you to embrace a strategy and a tactic to make this holiday season one of the best ever. Wishing all of you very happy holidays, and I thank you sincerely for the opportunity to share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mosk. And you may have been last on this year, but you're definitely not least. And those were some great words of encouragement and things that we needed tonight. So thank you very much. And I'm wishing you and your family a happy Thanksgiving and a happy Hanukkah, and know that we're still praying for your family daily as well.
Thank you sincerely.
You're welcome. Take care. And I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight. It's been a great call. Much things we have learned. We're going to, in just a minute, open up the line so everybody can tell each other good night like you guys like to do. And our next call will be November 22nd. And